She found out her husband was cheating on her with a wealthier woman. Years later, he was stunned to see her name on the Millionaires list. Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. The silence in the room was deafening. Sophia sat at the edge of the bed, staring blankly at the divorce papers that lay open on the small oak table. The words blurred together, but one phrase stood out like a dagger to the heart: irreconcilable differences. She had given her all to this marriage, but apparently that hadn't been enough. Not for Mark. And certainly not enough to compete with Elizabeth, the wealthy, glamorous woman who had stolen her husband away. Mark had barely tried to hide the affair. Sophia remembered the late nights when he claimed to be working at the office, the secretive phone calls, and the cologne that lingered on his shirt collars when he came home. Deep down she had known. But the final blow came when she overheard his phone conversation with Elizabeth 2 weeks ago. "I feel trapped, Liz," Mark had said, his voice low but unmistakably clear through the crack of the study door. "Sophia doesn't understand me. She's too small-minded. You and I, we can build something bigger together." Those words were burned into her memory. Small-minded. That was how he saw her. The woman who had supported him through years of financial struggle, sacrificed her own dreams to keep their household running, and stood by him when his first business venture collapsed. Now Mark was leaving her for Elizabeth, a high-powered investor who could offer him not just love, but a ticket to the life of luxury and influence he craved. And Sophia? He left her with a hollow marriage, a shattered heart, and barely enough savings to last a few months. The next few weeks were a blur of emotional and financial chaos. Mark moved out, taking most of their shared possessions with him. The house they had bought together, the one she had painstakingly decorated with second-hand finds and DIY projects, was sold off to cover Mark's debts. She had no choice but to move into a small, dimly lit one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of town. The apartment was a far cry from the life she had once envisioned for herself. The peeling wallpaper and creaky floorboards were a constant reminder of how far she had fallen. But as Sophia sat on the worn couch one evening, staring at the bare walls, something inside her shifted. She could either drown in bitterness and self-pity, or she could start over. And starting over meant rediscovering the woman she had been before Mark came into her life. One day, while rummaging through a box of old papers, she came across a letter from her late father. It was written on his old stationery, the ink slightly faded, but his words were as clear as ever. "Sophia, don't let anyone tell you you're not capable. You've got fire in you. Don't let it go out." Her father had been a risk-taker, an entrepreneur who had built a modest but successful construction business from the ground up. He hadn't left her much when he passed, just a small inheritance and a wealth of wisdom. For the first time in months, Sophia felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she still had a spark left. Determined to make a change, Sophia used part of her inheritance to enroll in an online course on financial literacy. She spent her days studying investment strategies, reading market trends, and watching videos about successful entrepreneurs. At night, she worked a part-time job at a local coffee shop to keep the lights on. One evening, as she scrolled through an online forum on startups, she stumbled upon a post that piqued her interest. It was a pitch from two sisters who had started an eco-friendly cosmetics brand in their garage. Their vision was clear, their passion palpable, but they lacked the funding to scale their business. Sophia took a leap of faith. She used a portion of her remaining inheritance to invest in their brand, becoming their first external investor. It wasn't a massive amount, but it was enough to help them purchase better equipment and expand their operations. The sisters were thrilled, and their gratitude gave Sophia a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. Weeks turned into months, and the cosmetics brand began to gain traction. Social media influencers raved about their products, and orders started pouring in. One day, Sophia received her first return on investment, a check that, while modest, represented more than just financial gain. It was proof that she could still make things happen. Buoyed by her initial success, Sophia immersed herself in the world of startups. She attended networking events, joined online communities, and even pitched in as a consultant for struggling small businesses in exchange for equity. Her knack for spotting potential began to attract attention in these circles. Her next major breakthrough came when she met Liam, a young engineer with a groundbreaking idea for renewable energy storage. Liam's pitch was raw but compelling, and Sophia saw in him the same fire her father had always talked about. She decided to invest a significant portion of her growing portfolio into his startup, negotiating a fair equity share in return. Liam's invention took off like wildfire. Within a year, major corporations were vying for partnerships, and the company U 2019's valuation skyrocketed. Sophia U 2019's equity multiplied several times over, catapulting her into a new financial league. Meanwhile, Mark U 2019's world crumbles. While Sophia was rising, Mark was falling. His ventures with Elizabeth had not gone as planned. The ambitious real estate projects they had poured money into turned out to be poorly timed and mismanaged. Elizabeth, who had promised him the world, quietly distanced herself as the financial losses mounted. Mark's once flashy lifestyle dissolved into debt and desperation. His social circle, which had been filled with wealthy acquaintances, dwindled as his reputation for failure spread. But through it all, he never thought about Sophia. To him, she was just part of a past he had buried. That is, until one fateful evening. Mark sat alone in his cramped studio apartment, flipping through channels on an old television. He was barely paying attention when a familiar name caught his ear. He turned up the volume, his jaw tightening as the news anchor spoke. Sophia Bennett, one of this year's top 100 millionaires under 40, is making waves in the investment world. Known for her keen eye for innovation, Bennett's portfolio includes several high-growth startups, including the revolutionary renewable energy firm, GreensPark. Mark froze as the screen displayed a glossy magazine cover. There she was, Sophia, radiant and confident, her name printed boldly beneath the headline, "The Visionary Investor." His mind raced. How had she done it? This was the woman he had dismissed as lacking ambition, the woman he had cheated on and abandoned. Now she was being celebrated as a self-made millionaire, while he could barely keep his electricity on. For the first time in years, Mark felt a pang of regret. But it was too late. Sophia's success was her own, and he had no part in it. Mark couldn't sleep that night. The image of Sophia on the magazine cover haunted him, her success a constant reminder of his own failures. He tried to convince himself it was luck, a one-off miracle that she had somehow stumbled into. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized he had underestimated her all along. The woman he had dismissed as unambitious had clearly been working tirelessly while he had been chasing empty promises. Meanwhile, Sophia was far removed from any thoughts of Mark. Her days were filled with meetings, strategy sessions, and brainstorming new ways to expand her growing empire. The same determination that had fueled her small beginnings now drove her to dream bigger. She no longer saw herself as the woman left behind, but as someone who had forged a new path entirely on her own. Her next venture was one she had been contemplating for months. U 2014, a startup incubator designed to help underrepresented entrepreneurs. She remembered what it felt like to be overlooked, to have potential dismissed simply because she didn't fit a certain mold. She wanted to change that for others who were starting out with nothing but a dream. The idea quickly gained traction, and soon major investors and corporations were reaching out to partner with her. Sophia's calendar became packed with speaking engagements, networking events, and interviews. Every time she shared her story, she emphasized the importance of resilience and self-belief. Her rise wasn't just about financial success. It was about proving to herself that she was more than what Mark had reduced her to. And with every milestone she achieved, she felt a deeper sense of fulfillment that no amount of money could buy. For Mark, life continued its downward spiral. His financial troubles worsened, and he found himself avoiding phone calls from creditors. Elizabeth had long since moved on, leaving him with nothing but memories of the life he thought he deserved. One evening, as he sat in his dingy apartment nursing a cheap beer, he decided to look Sophia up online. What he found stunned him. There were countless articles praising her sharp business acumen and her ability to identify and nurture groundbreaking startups. One headline caught his eye: "From rock bottom to boardrooms, the inspiring journey of Sophia Bennett." He clicked on the article, scrolling through the glowing account of her success. Every word felt like a punch to the gut. She had done it / 2014. She had achieved everything he had once mocked her for dreaming about. For weeks, Mark obsessed over Sophia's story. He watched videos of her speeches, read interviews, and followed her social media accounts. He told himself it was curiosity, but deep down, he knew it was something more. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had made the biggest mistake of his life by letting her go. Sophia, on the other hand, had no idea that Mark was keeping tabs on her. She was too busy finalizing the launch of her incubator program. The inaugural event was a massive success, drawing in media coverage and spotlighting several promising entrepreneurs. As she stood on stage, addressing a room full of aspiring innovators, she felt a sense of pride that dwarfed any personal victory she had experienced before. This was her legacy / 2014, not the wealth, not the magazine covers, but the impact she could make on others. After the event, Sophia was approached by one of the attendees, a young woman named Mia who had just secured funding for her eco-friendly packaging startup. Mia's story reminded Sophia of her own early struggles, and she couldn't help but feel a deep connection to the younger woman. They chatted for hours, and by the end of the night, Sophia had agreed to mentor her personally. Word of Sophia's mentorship spread quickly, further cementing her reputation as not just a savvy investor but also a compassionate leader. Invitations to collaborate poured in from all corners of the business world. Among them was a surprising email from a struggling tech firm seeking investors. Sophia recognized the company name instantly. It was Mark's. The email was written in desperation, outlining the company's dire financial situation and pleading for an infusion of capital to keep it afloat. Sophia couldn't help but laugh at the irony. Mark, the man who had left her for someone he thought was better, was now begging for her help. She decided to respond, but not in the way he had hoped. A week later, Mark received a reply. The email was brief and to the point, signed by one of Sophia's assistants. "Thank you for reaching out. Ms. Bennett has reviewed your proposal and has decided not to proceed at this time. We wish you the best in your future endeavors." Mark stared at the screen, his face pale. He had hoped that Sophia's success might soften her feelings toward him, that she might still see some good in him despite everything. But the rejection made it clear that he was nothing more than a distant memory to her now. Sophia, however, couldn't ignore the lingering sense of unfinished business. While she had no intention of helping Mark financially, she couldn't deny that a part of her wanted him to see firsthand what she had accomplished. Not out of spite, but as a way to reclaim the power he had once taken from her. With that thought in mind, she began to plan something that would put her success / 2014 and his failure / 2014 on full display. The opportunity came sooner than expected. A prestigious business conference was being organized in their city, and Sophia was invited to be the keynote speaker. She accepted without hesitation, knowing that it would be the perfect stage to solidify her reputation. She also knew there was a high chance that Mark, desperate to revive his career, would attend. When the day of the conference arrived, Sophia felt a mix of nerves and excitement. She had rehearsed her speech countless times, but this wasn't just about delivering a polished presentation. This was about confronting her past and embracing her future. As she stepped onto the stage, the room erupted into applause. She scanned the audience briefly and spotted him. Mark sat near the back, his expression unreadable, but she knew he recognized her. She began her speech, recounting her journey from heartbreak to triumph. She spoke candidly about the challenges she had faced, the risks she had taken, and the lessons she had learned along the way. Her words resonated with the audience, drawing nods of agreement and even a few tears. When she finished, the crowd gave her a standing ovation, and for the first time, she truly felt like she had won. As Sophia walked off the stage, she caught a glimpse of Mark slipping out of the room. his head down and his shoulders slumped. She didn't feel pity for him / 2014, only a sense of closure. He had made his choice, and so had she. And in the end, her choice had led her to a life far richer than anything he could have ever offered. Mark left the conference hall with his head swimming. Sophia's speech had been a painful reminder of everything he had lost. The woman he once dismissed as unambitious and ordinary had built an empire, her success shining brighter than anything he had ever achieved. He thought about approaching her, even rehearsed what he might say. But as he stood in the lobby, watching her surrounded by admirers and reporters, he realized how futile it would be. She had moved far beyond him, and there was no going back. For days, Mark replayed the moment over and over in his mind. The sound of her voice, her commanding presence, the way the audience had hung on her every word / 2014, it all gnawed at him. Regret seeped into every corner of his thoughts. He had thrown away the one person who had truly believed in him, all for a fantasy that had crumbled into dust. Now he was left with nothing but debt and the bitter taste of his own mistakes. Sophia, on the other hand, barely gave Mark a second thought. The conference had been a resounding success, and her keynote speech had opened doors to new opportunities. She was inundated with invitations to collaborate, offers to expand her incubator program, and requests for mentorship. Yet amidst the whirlwind of her professional life, she felt a growing desire to focus on something more personal. For years, Sophia had poured all her energy into her career, using it as a way to rebuild herself after the devastation of her marriage. But now that she had achieved so much, she began to wonder what else life had to offer. She thought about her father's legacy, his belief in taking risks and building something meaningful. She realized that her true happiness didn't come from wealth or recognition but from making a difference in the lives of others. With that in mind, Sophia decided to expand her incubator program into a non-profit foundation. The foundation would provide funding, resources, and mentorship to underprivileged entrepreneurs, particularly women and minorities who faced systemic barriers in the business world. It was a bold move, one that required a significant financial commitment, but Sophia knew it was the right path for her. As the foundation took shape, Sophia felt a renewed sense of purpose. She traveled to underserved communities, meeting aspiring entrepreneurs who reminded her of herself in the early days of her journey. Their stories of struggle and resilience inspired her, fueling her determination to create lasting change. One evening, as she reviewed the foundation's progress reports, Sophia received an unexpected email. It was from Mia, the young entrepreneur she had mentored months earlier. Mia's startup had just secured a major partnership with an international corporation, and she credited Sophia's guidance for her success. The email brought tears to Sophia's eyes. It was moments like this that made everything worthwhile. She realized that her impact extended far beyond her own achievements. It was about the ripple effect she had created, empowering others to chase their dreams. Meanwhile, Mark's life continued to unravel. His tech firm went bankrupt, leaving him with no choice but to file for personal bankruptcy as well. His once pristine reputation was in shambles, and he found himself ostracized from the very social circles he had once coveted. Alone and broke, Mark moved into a small apartment in a rundown neighborhood, a far cry from the lavish lifestyle he had once enjoyed. One day, as he walked past a newsstand, he saw Sophia's face on the cover of another magazine. This time the headline read, "The Heart of Success: How Sophia Bennett is Changing the World." He picked up the magazine and flipped through the pages, his chest tightening as he read about her foundation and the lives she was transforming. The article described her as a trailblazer, a visionary, and a force for good in the world. Mark felt a pang of jealousy, but it was quickly overshadowed by shame. He had spent years chasing superficial success, while Sophia had built something truly meaningful. Mark knew he couldn't undo the past, but he decided to take one small step toward redemption. He wrote Sophia a letter, pouring out his regrets and apologizing for the way he had treated her. He didn't expect a response. He only wanted her to know that he acknowledged his mistakes. When Sophia received the letter, she was surprised but not moved. She read it once, then tucked it away in a drawer. She had long since made peace with the past, and Mark's words, while sincere, held no power over her. She didn't need his apology to validate her journey. Her success and the life she had built were validation enough. Years passed, and Sophia's foundation grew into a global network of support for aspiring entrepreneurs. Her name became synonymous with innovation and compassion, a symbol of what could be achieved through perseverance and vision. She remained humble, always attributing her success to the lessons she had learned through hardship. As for Mark, he faded into obscurity. He took a job as a low-level consultant, scraping by on a meager salary. Occasionally, he would hear Sophia's name mentioned in the news or see her featured in a documentary about influential leaders. Each time, he felt a pang of regret, a reminder of what he had lost. But he also felt a sliver of gratitude for having known her, even if he hadn't appreciated her when he had the chance. One sunny afternoon, Sophia stood on the stage of a packed auditorium, accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award for her contributions to the business world and society at large. As she looked out at the sea of faces, she thought about how far she had come /U 2014 from the heartbroken woman left with nothing to a force of change inspiring others to rise above their circumstances. Success, she said, her voice steady and clear, isn't about what you gain, it's about what you give. And the most valuable thing you can give is hope. The audience erupted into applause, a standing ovation that seemed to shake the walls. Sophia smiled, her heart full. She had won, not just against Mark but against every obstacle life had thrown at her. And in that moment, she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story.